There is chaos in the air, and social media is on fire once again. Singer Keke Wyatt is trembling under the weight of accusations that have turned her world upside down. Her ex-husband, Zachariah Daring, did not just walk away from the marriage, he detonated it on the internet. In a jaw-dropping twist, Zachariah decided to sit down with none other than Tasha K., the queen of celebrity chaos, and spilled every drop of tea he had been holding back. What he revealed has left everyone speechless. According to Zachariah, behind the picture-perfect gospel vocals and big family smiles, there was a dark secret. He claimed that during their marriage, Keke was allegedly having an affair with her own cousin. Yes, you heard that right. Her cousin. The internet froze. Twitter went feral. TikTok detectives pulled up every interview, every old photo, every side-eye moment from her reality show appearances. People started connecting dots that were never meant to be connected. And it did not stop there. The accusations got even darker. Zachariah claimed Keke once told her son, Raja K. Morton, that his illness was punishment because he had been with other men. That statement alone shattered hearts across the internet. The hypocrisy. The cruelty. The sheer coldness of it. People were furious, questioning how a mother could say something so destructive to her own child. Now, the gossip mills are spinning out of control. Some internet users, merciless as ever, are taking things further, speculating that Keke's youngest child's health struggles might somehow be linked to that alleged relationship with her cousin during her pregnancy. It is a horrifying claim, but the question everyone keeps whispering is, what if there is truth hidden beneath the madness? The comment sections are ruthless. How many of her kids are actually her cousins? One user wrote. Another replied, at this point, her family tree looks like a circle. It is brutal, but that is the internet for you. Once blood hits the water, the sharks come fast. Before this new explosion, Keke had already been a magnet for chaos. Anyone who has followed her career knows this is not her first scandal. Her name has always been wrapped in drama, heartbreak, and more marriages than anyone can count. She has been called everything from misunderstood to manipulative, but one thing is certain, wherever Keke goes, storms follow. Her story began early. At just 18 years old, Keke walked down the aisle with her then road manager, Ramont Morton. For a while, things looked perfect on the outside. But behind closed doors, the love story turned into a battlefield. Reports say their marriage was filled with violence, fights, and tragedy. It reached a terrifying point when Keke, according to her, stabbed him in self-defense. That moment marked the end of innocence and the beginning of a lifetime of headlines. They shared 3 children together, and she even carried a 4th, until tragedy struck again. The baby was lost to stillbirth just as the marriage was crumbling. That loss broke her spirit, but instead of finding peace, Keke moved from one heartbreak to another, like a flame that refuses to die even as it burns everything around it. And now, years later, she finds herself in the eye of yet another storm, one that might just be the biggest of her life. After her first marriage collapsed in flames, Keke Wyatt tried to rebuild her image, to start over, this time with faith at the center. In 2010, she married Michael Jamar Ford, a church minister. To outsiders, it looked like redemption. The broken woman finally found a man of God to heal her heart. But behind the perfect photos and Sunday smiles, another storm was already brewing. Michael would later file for divorce, shattering the illusion. He claimed Keke was toxic, that her love came with chaos attached. He said he could no longer raise children in that kind of environment. And here is where the story gets even more devastating. At the time Michael walked away, Keke was 8 months pregnant. 8 months. She was carrying life inside her while simultaneously watching another part of her life die. To make matters even more heartbreaking, her son Raja was battling leukemia during this same period. Michael released a statement that sounded like the words of a man who had reached his limit, yet still loved what he was leaving behind. For over 7 years, I have been Keke's husband, backbone, friend, confidant, and support system. I have loved, raised, supported, and cared for every child in our family, biological or not, including our son who is currently fighting leukemia. I will continue to be that person, but I will not be her husband. That statement hit the internet like a thunderclap. Fans could feel the exhaustion behind his words. This was not just a breakup, it was a man finally escaping a spiritual war. But Keke? Oh, she was not about to go down quietly. Within hours, she was on Instagram, crying, trembling, and unleashing her pain on the world. Her tears turned into a public performance of heartbreak and defiance. Some viewers felt sympathy. Others saw manipulation. The comments section was a battlefield of divided opinions. And then, less than a year later, she stunned everyone again, announcing her 9th pregnancy, this time with her new husband Zachariah Daring. The internet barely had time to recover before another scandal exploded. Because not long after, Keke announced yet another divorce, and this one would become her most explosive yet. Unlike her previous husbands who quietly disappeared after signing the papers, Zachariah went nuclear. He was not content to leave. He wanted the world to know. He began doing interviews, one after another, sitting in front of cameras, spilling every dark secret he had ever kept. It was like watching a man unload years of pain and rage. Keke had hinted at their split weeks earlier when she was seen bowling, laughing, and getting close to a mysterious man later identified as Anthony Whitehead. Clips of the two went viral overnight. Twitter was merciless. YouTube gossip channels flooded timelines with titles like Keke Wyatt Caught Again and Meet the New Mystery Man. When she finally went live to clear the air, her words only deepened the confusion. She insisted that Anthony was just a friend, but also confirmed that her marriage to Zach was over. She even hinted that Zach had put his hands on her. From that point on, the story spiraled into madness. Zach responded like a man on a mission. He posted his own video, claiming that Keke was the true reason for their divorce. According to him, only 3 weeks after he left the house, Keke allegedly invited her married cousin to move in as his replacement. The claim sounded unbelievable until Zach came forward with photos, text messages, and timestamps. He claimed that the affair had started long before the divorce, but that once he left, Keke stopped hiding it. And the most disturbing part? Zach said Keke and this cousin planned to start a church together. That statement alone sent shockwaves through social media. Suddenly, Keke's image as a soulful, faith-driven woman started to crumble. Memes flooded the internet. Hashtags like #CousinGate and #ChurchOfChaos began trending. People were not just gossiping, they were dissecting her life like a crime scene. But Zach had more to say. In a February interview with Tasha K., he went for the jugular. He claimed Keke had tormented her second husband, Michael, to the point of mental collapse. According to him, Michael had once been kind, patient, and deeply spiritual, but by the time the marriage ended, he was unrecognizable. And then came the bombshell. Zach alleged that one of Keke's own children had been inappropriately touched by a man she had been seeing, and that Keke knew about it. The words hung in the air like poison. Even Tasha K., known for her tough exterior, looked shaken. Zach said Keke did nothing. That she turned a blind eye to the abuse because she could not stand being alone. According to him, she was willing to sacrifice her own child's safety just to keep a man by her side. It sounded like something ripped straight out of a psychological horror movie. But Zach swore it was real. He said he had lived it, watched it, powerless to stop it. And just when people thought it could not get darker, it did. Zach claimed Keke had sold herself to the devil. He said it with trembling hands, his voice breaking under the weight of his own words. He described a woman consumed by darkness, one who would sit alone in candlelight, whispering chants he could not understand, surrounding herself with energies that terrified him. He insisted it was not a metaphor. To him, it was literal. He believed Keke had made spiritual deals for fame, fortune, and relevance, and that after that, everything changed. Her warmth disappeared. Her laughter turned cold. Her eyes, he said, looked empty. For years, fans had seen Keke as a tragic figure, a woman who loved too deeply and paid the price. But this? This flipped the entire narrative. If Zach was telling the truth, then Keke was not the victim. She was the villain in a story she wrote herself. Social media split in two. Some believed Zach was bitter and weaponizing his pain. Others claimed they had felt it all along, that strange interviews, cryptic quotes, and that unsettling energy were warning signs no one wanted to see. And then came the final blow. Her son, the same one who had bravely fought leukemia, spoke out. The internet froze again. His words were not tabloid gossip. They were raw, broken, and real. He said his mother had told him that his cancer was his punishment for being gay. That his suffering was God's justice. He claimed she said that if she had known he would turn out that way, she would never have paid for his treatment, she would have just let him die. The internet went silent. Then it erupted. People were heartbroken. Outraged. Betrayed. How could a woman who built her brand on faith and love allegedly say something so cruel to her own child? It was like discovering that the pastor's halo was nothing more than a shadow. The image she had spent decades building, of the strong, God-fearing mother who overcame it all, shattered into dust. And now, the question the world cannot stop asking is, was Keke Wyatt ever who she said she was, or has the world been singing along to a lie all this time? For years, Keke Wyatt stood beneath the golden glow of her own halo. She was the woman of faith who cried on stages about divine strength, who preached redemption to broken women, who posted tearful devotionals about healing through prayer. She was the voice of forgiveness and the face of perseverance. When she spoke, people listened. When she cried, they cried with her. Her followers saw her as more than a singer, she was a testimony. A living miracle. Every quote, every caption, every prayer she shared was consumed like holy water. But now, the light had cracked. And through that fracture, the truth began to seep out, dark, jagged, and unforgiving. It began with a video. Not a tabloid leak. Not a gossip blog post. A simple video, shaky, dimly lit, but raw enough to slice through the internet like lightning. It was her son. The same boy who once fought for his life in a hospital bed while she stood beside him, asking for prayers. Except this time, he was not asking for prayer. He was asking for truth. He sat in front of the camera, voice trembling but steady enough to carry the weight of every unspoken wound. His eyes, tired, yet defiant, told a story words barely could. He said he was not trying to ruin his mother's career. He said she had already done that herself. What he wanted was peace. He spoke about growing up believing that God hated him, because his mother told him so. That his sickness, his pain, his near death, were all punishment for who he was. The internet froze. And then it ignited. Millions watched the video within hours. Some cried in disbelief. Others clenched their fists in anger. A few refused to accept it. There's no way, they said. Keke would never say that. But the evidence, the tone, the conviction, the heartbreak in his voice, felt too real to ignore. The same public that once called her an angel now began to wonder if that angel had been wearing a mask all along. Old clips began resurfacing like ghosts from the past. Footage of Keke talking about the dangers of straying from God's path. Interviews where she warned about impurity and dark lifestyles. Words that once sounded like faith now sounded like judgment. The internet began connecting dots she thought she had buried years ago. Keke remained silent. No posts. No statements. Just silence. But in the digital age, silence is confession. With every day she said nothing, the whispers grew louder. Brands cut ties. Collaborations vanished overnight. Influencers who once praised her deleted their posts. Churches removed her from their rosters. The woman who once symbolized grace was now being erased, pixel by pixel. Of course, there were still defenders. Loyal fans insisting the world misunderstood her. That the story was being twisted. That maybe her son was exaggerating. But then came the screenshots. Messages allegedly from Keke herself, "You are not the son I prayed for. God is not pleased with who you've become." Those few lines hit like a hammer. And with that, the fragile wall protecting her reputation collapsed completely. She was not just cancelled, she was exiled. Every corner of social media became a trial. Her name turned into a warning. Every time she tried to post, the comments flooded in like a wave of righteous fury. Practice what you preach. Where was your love when your son needed it? You cannot talk about grace when you refuse to show it. Behind the scenes, the stories only grew darker. A former assistant claimed Keke's holiness was a performance, that she demanded her team pray before every meeting but would curse them out moments later. Another said that during her son's chemo treatments, she cared more about lighting and camera angles than his pain. Someone else revealed that her tearful live streams were rehearsed, every sob, every prayer strategically planned for engagement. Fans were heartbroken. They had seen her as a survivor, a woman who rose from the ashes of abuse and tragedy. Now they were forced to ask the unthinkable: had her entire redemption arc been built on someone else's suffering? Then her son revealed more, stories that shattered whatever fragments of sympathy remained. He described how, during chemo, she told him to repent. How she banned nurses from playing worldly music in his hospital room because it invited spirits. How, at 17, when he finally told her the truth about himself, she screamed, not out of confusion, but fury. He said she threw his clothes into the street and told him he would never find peace because he had chosen the devil. And the worst part? For years, he believed her. He said he used to lie in that hospital bed, weak and scared, staring at the ceiling, begging God to fix him, to make him normal, to make him worthy of her love. He said he promised God that if he survived, he would change everything about himself. He would become straight. He would do anything just to be loved again. When he said that, the internet broke. People wept. Others raged. Entire comment sections turned into therapy circles where strangers shared their own stories of religious rejection. For the first time, it was not just about Keke Wyatt, it was about every child who had ever been told they were unworthy of love because of who they were. Still, Keke remained silent. Rumors swirled. Some said she had gone into hiding. Others claimed she was attending secret, spiritual cleansings. But then, a month later, she reappeared, and with her, the last thread of her reputation snapped. She posted a long statement, what looked like an apology at first glance. But within seconds, people realized it was not one. As a mother, I have always loved my son, she wrote. But love does not mean agreement. Sometimes love means telling hard truths. Those words detonated online. The very tone that once inspired thousands now felt weaponized. She said she had been misunderstood, that her faith guided her words, and that she was only praying for her son's deliverance. She ended the message with, "I will always be his mother, and I will always pray for his soul." Her son responded hours later. His words cut like glass, "If that is love, then I would rather have none." And just like that, the internet crowned him the voice of truth, and her, the symbol of everything that had gone wrong. News outlets ran headlines calling it the downfall of a gospel queen. Think pieces flooded YouTube and TikTok, using her story as a warning about toxic religion and performative faith. Even journalists started digging into her old sermons, matching her preaching timelines to her son's illness. What they found was haunting. She had been building her brand on his pain, dressing his suffering in scripture, and selling it as inspiration. Her books were pulled from shelves. Churches canceled her speaking engagements. Former fans burned her CDs live on TikTok. Her sponsors dropped her with carefully worded statements about values and immorality. Within months, the empire she had spent decades building was gone. Meanwhile, her son became the voice of healing. He said he did not want revenge, only peace. He said he had spent years learning to forgive the woman who had broken him, not for her sake, but for his own survival. He said, "Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is just letting go of the poison she left inside me." And as his voice trembled but stood strong, one truth echoed louder than all the rest. The same woman who once said, "Your truth will set you free," was finally destroyed by the truth she could not face. Time moved on, as it always does. The internet, hungry for its next scandal, found new villains to dissect and new saints to worship. The hashtags faded. The memes died. But for those who once loved her, who once believed in her tears and her prayers, something inside them broke. They were left with a wound that never fully healed. A reminder that the people who scream the loudest about purity are often the ones most desperate to hide their own darkness. For her son, though, the silence that followed became freedom. He said he no longer saw his illness as punishment. He no longer looked at his reflection and saw sin. He said he finally understood that survival itself was his victory, that he had lived through everything designed to destroy him, even his own mother's words. And that is what truly shattered people. Not just what she said, but the betrayal behind it. The idea that love, sacred, unconditional love, could be warped into something so cruel. That a mother's embrace could become a weapon. That faith, once meant to heal, had been used to wound. Keke's story stopped being just a celebrity scandal. It became a mirror. A reflection of everything people fear about love that comes with conditions, about kindness that disappears when it is most needed. It forced everyone watching to confront their own memories, the rejection, the silence, the longing for approval that never came. That is why this story never truly disappeared. Because somewhere inside it, people recognized themselves. The fear of not being enough. The ache of being loved only when convenient. The grief of realizing that sometimes, the people who preach love the hardest are the ones who never learned how to give it. And in that realization, the internet did not mourn Keke Wyatt's downfall, it mourned her son's childhood. The innocence lost in hospital rooms. The prayers whispered in pain. The little boy who believed that God had turned his back on him because his own mother said so. Because in the end, there is no redemption without truth. And for Keke, that truth